to introduce her. So I'm really excited. I'm going to introduce Miko Yuck. She's just an all-around awesome data professional, great data leader. She's the chief data evangelist at Count.co, co-founder of BI Brains, host of the Analytics on Fire podcast. She has trained literally thousands of individuals on how to strategically use the power of data visualization to enhance the decision-making process. I'll tell you a bit about Count. So Count brings your data team and business together. We want them together so you can solve problems, not just look at charts. I love looking at charts, but I know we need to do more than that. It's built for hybrid work. Count supports the messy, iterative nature of analysis so you can extract the most from your data. And today, Miko is talking to us about the art of data collaboration. We need more collaboration. She'll tell us how to reduce analyst workflow by 75%. That's huge. I'm going to go ahead and bring Miko up on our stage. Hello, welcome to the Modern Data Fest.
Hey. How are you guys? I was enjoying Salman's presentation. That was great.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I thank you for being our big closer of the day. So you've got about 10 minutes to do your presentation. We'll come back for some Q&A. The stage is all yours.
Okay. All right. Hey, guys. I'm seeing the comments, trying not to be distracted. So hello. It's interesting because I was listening to like the last two presentations because I just came off of high holidays and I'm so excited. Okay, so let's jump right into it. So I decided in the light of collaboration not to have any slides because I feel like I'm dying of PowerPoint to some extent. So we're going to have a good discussion about this and I'm looking forward to seeing the comments. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about collaboration when it comes to dealing with data, right? A lot of times, if you are having to collaborate, it's typically through meetings of some sort, right? It's usually in a meeting or you're trying to like gather requirements or you're doing some type of process that truly a lot of people they cringe when they think about it. And so the interesting thing about this is we go through this kind of like process where we quote unquote collaborate in these meeting rooms or virtually as of late. And then we come up with these requirements and then these requirements require a little bit more collaboration. And then essentially in my world, we end up with some level of data visualization. And we are then not happy because no one uses it. And so what we discovered is that when it comes down to collaboration, people really are struggling, okay? So I'm going to pose the problem to you guys, and I'm going to give you guys a few solutions because I only have 10 minutes, and then I hope this will go into some great Q&A. All right, so being a Count.co, what was fascinating is, I don't know if you guys have read this article, Dashboards Are Dead. And then later on, we had Gartner kind of put this as a number 2 trend. But the reality is that dashboards are not dead. What they are good for is operations. And my colleague, Ryan Dolly, wrote a really good article about this, and he termed this, listen to this. Dashboards are great for operations, but they're also ad hoc generating machines. So I remember like a couple of years ago, I used to teach people and say, hey, you know what? Dashboard are for answers, not for questions. But the reality of creating dashboards is once you produce them, guys, and all in favor say, anybody who's experienced this, once you produce a dashboard, you end up with a million questions, right? And then from there, you kind of go into this patching scenario where you're putting all these things onto your dashboard and you're hoping for the best. And then you end up with what I call the Incredible Hulk. And no one kind of knows where it got broken, okay? And so the in-between collaboration that happens, in my opinion, is fairly dysfunctional because what you end up happening is you have people that are sending you additions or requirements or feedback, you know, with regards to what they want. And it's coming in all over the place. Like it's coming in Slack, it's coming in email. It could even work physically, right? And so, you know, you're just stand up there, you're thinking, okay, and this was me, by the way. So I'm talking from personal experience, and you're thinking, okay, this is never going to come to an end. And so this is where it kind of took me over to go, okay, listen, there has to be a better way to do this, okay? And instead of being focused on the output medium, which is a dashboard, maybe we need to focus on the art of collaboration and make sure that we're kind of tackling that first, right? Like this is where it starts. And so kind of jumping into that, I want to give you guys some good tips on how to kind of tackle collaboration because I do so many presentations on this and I teach people and I actually physically see kind of the friction that happens. So first and foremost, when it comes to collaboration, the first thing that you need to remember is that you need to be human, This is really important. I don't know what happens in like corporate America. Like we go into these modes of like, probably why I'm at a startup of like, when we get in front of people, we turn into like these robots and everything becomes quote unquote professional. The problem that it's not real. Like if anything we could take away from TikTok is be your true self. Okay. So the first thing I recommend is like number one, be human. The second thing I recommend when it comes to collaboration is similar to almost dating or a relationship, is it shouldn't be forced, right? Like, and it feels that way sometimes when you're inviting people to a meeting, you get in the room and it's just like, let's go. And it feels kind of forced. Like you want to make sure there's a rule that I teach called the 3 nods. Okay. And I teach this to my students and they love it. And so the 3 nod rule is when you get into a room, you want to ask a single binary question. Okay. And the binary question should have a yes or a no. So what we tend to do is we ask the question, for instance, so I walk in, I'll say in the room, hey, is everybody doing okay today? Yes. Okay. You guys, is everybody settled? Yes. And so what they've scientifically proven is that if you get people to give at least 3 yeses back to back, their brain goes into a congruency pattern and it begins to actually match your brain. Now, that is something a lot of people don't know, and do not abuse this. I tell my students all the time, do not abuse this technique. If you have a teenager, you could try this at home. It might actually take like 50 nods, right? If any of you have a teenager at home. But if you try this technique on your spouse or your partner, it's actually been scientifically proven that your brains go into congruency and the person is more likely to agree with you on things, okay? The other thing that I like to teach, so that second rule, just so I see Case writing it down, is to get into congruency as quickly as possible, whether you're in person or not, or online. The third thing that I like to teach people when it comes to collaboration is really important, which is be less focused on the technology and more focused in on the person. And so what I like to do is instead of jumping in and saying, hey, and sometimes I go too far with it and saying, hey, let's open up the report. Let's take a what we have. Time is of the essence. I do like to ask people and make sure it's stuff like, hey, just let's take a step back, close all the stuff we have. And I like to ask you what you're seeking to accomplish today. Like it's really, really important. And I try to get in deeper and emotionally into like what they're trying to get out of this, not to automate a report, but I want to hear things like, you know what, I got to do this report every end of the month and it's killing me. So I don't want to do it anymore. Right. And so that's where I get into like feeling the pain of like this person feels like you're on this treadmill, they can't get off. And so I try to get quickly and teach you guys how to get into people's pain as quickly as possible. And then I think the fourth thing is really important. And I go back to my colleague, Ryan Dolly. He's awesome, by the way, from Count. He's our head of data. And, he kind of broke this down when it comes to the medium that you're focused on and the output. I always say, look, everything is not a dashboard, right? And so one of the things that I think is important that he taught is he talked about the fact that there's something called data presentation fit, okay? So there's 2 components in terms of how you view your delivery, right? There's 2 sides to the coin. He's probably like, look at me, you're messing it up. He helped me with this. He said there's 2 sides to the coin when it comes to data visualization. There is what you deliver and there's how you built it, right? And so we talked already about how you built it. I think the other thing that's important, and I like the way he phrases this, is he says, data presentation fit is important. And that's where I go back to saying a dashboard is not for everything. Okay. Dashboards are great for operations, but it's important that you look at other mediums when it comes to being able to get to solutions. So without going into like a vendor pitch, I know for me personally, I've built over 1,000 dashboards in my career. Okay. And I've reviewed God knows how many other good, bad, and ugly. And one of my big takeaways from it is, you know what? A lot of times the failure when it comes to data visualizations is not the deployment or the visuals and all this other garbage people are obsessed on. It's actually the collaboration process that they went through to get there that was broken. Therefore, their outputs are broken. And so what we are seeking to do at Count is we're seeking to challenge people to redefine collaboration, where instead of kind of coming in a room together, having a nice conversation, doing the freaking data kumbaya, going away and then coming back with a quote unquote product, what we're recommending is why not work and solve the problems together? And I'm very passionate about that. This is coming from someone, again, that's built over 1,000 dashboards in my career, okay? Which kind of ages me, but I have to tell you, I've just seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I think, what we feel is that when it comes on to making great decisions, and that's what quote unquote dashboards are for, there's a few things that you need to do, all right? Number one is, which is what I'm known for, is you need to make sure that you're telling stories. Okay. And I know you guys have heard a lot about that. Number two is you need to make sure that you guys have embedded context. So instead of what I talked about earlier, where you're on Slack and you're on Outlook and doing all these crazy threads. I remember one time I had a requirement gathering session that had 298 emails in a thread with someone asking to clarify a requirement. If I could only find the person who created the reply all button in Outlook, me and them would have a discussion. Okay. Anyways, number three then is to make sure that you have a set narrative, right? Narrative being kind of the structure of your story, the events. Number four is make sure you're able to annotate. And I think last but not least is making sure that you're solving the real business problems. Okay. So this is kind of this framework and this new way of working that I'm a big champion of, that Count is focused on. And so the real purpose of my presentation is just to invite people to, instead of being so focused on the end medium, if you really want to tackle, and I put it on here, right? I said, how do we reduce this entire analyst workflow by 75%? Let's redefine collaboration. Let's not just think of the world as black and white. I gather requirements and produce a dashboard. Let's dig into the collaboration portion of it, redefine the way we work, make sure that we have things really centralized, not just our data, but our comments, the story, the narrative, the entire process of requirement gathering, prototyping, and the final product. And let's get people engaged and let's keep them engaged so the story doesn't die after the process. Okay, so I didn't get a chance to read the comments, but I'm excited. So Kate, that is what I have for DATAcated and the MDF book.
I love it. Thank you so much, Miko. Yes, we've got lots of comments and questions that came in. I also have questions prepared. Ravid has questions prepared. Since you're the final speaker, we can literally go for the next hour, but we'll take a couple of questions. I don't want to take up too much of your time. So Ravid, you want to kick things off? First question?
Yeah, 100%. First of all, great presentation, Miko. We loved it. I've seen the comments. People love it. We love your rules, the principles that you explain, and obviously your analogy behind dashboards, and your experience speaks for itself. So thanks for that. One quick question here that I wanted to pick from Mike Nash is like the idea of collaborative. Okay, he had a comment like the idea of collaborative analytics, as there are so many platforms and that takes the client's eyes off the business and objectives. But do you have any use case to share your, Miko, by any chance?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Mike, for that comment. I think that's a really good comment. And the reason why I didn't use the word collaborative analytics is, unfortunately, if you go into Google and type it in, the definition's a bit muddy. So I was very careful with terms. People might go in Google and look for it, because all you get is a lot of marketing of all these BI tools that say, hey, we're doing collaborative analytics. And all they're showing you is like an admin log that is pretty. That is not collaborative analytics, okay? The world has advanced now, right? For God help me, we have a freaking phone that's probably right now going to start sending me BI tools, right? Because it's listening to what we're saying. So just be warned, I'm not big on the cliche terms, but yes, so I can give you one quick use case, because I know we're kind of pressed for time. So I have a good example of a client. I want to go back to that 298 thread email that I talked about. I can't name the client, and that was a very simple thread. So what we did is we did requirements gathering, and there was one metric that was new to the company that they couldn't decide on, and it literally Ravid and Kate started a thread of people saying, hey, how do you measure this? Then they brought in their colleagues. How do you measure this? Then they replied all to a group. How do you measure this? And I mean, it was a 300 email thread of people saying, I like it or I don't. And you know what I realized in that segment? I said, you know what? I wrote them and I said, hey guys, I think the way we're collaborating is becoming dysfunctional. Why don't we get in a room and get on a whiteboard and take a look at this really quickly and really understand what this is? And so long story short, by completely diffracting ourselves from this crazy message trail, we were able to come down to a metric that worked. And then we implemented a polling system instead of an email thread, right? That was quickly able to get a consensus on what was the right term for that KPI. So I think again, the collaboration that we have right now I feel in data, I don't know, it just feels forced and not natural. And a lot of data people don't even like to collaborate, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, when you were talking about that 298 reply all email, you brought back some of my horror stories from just corporate world of the reply alls can get kind of crazy, but very interesting example of how we can get better, right? An area where we can improve.
Yeah.
And I really like this this question from Jessica. She's asking, what are some of the most common problems that actually harm collaboration? So one was probably the tools, right? They were trying to use email to collaborate where you found an alternative. So what other obstacles do folks face when they're trying to collaborate?
I think just bulldozing through people's and ignoring stuff like people's emotions and feelings. Like I read a book, right, called that my mentor gave me called Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play by Mahan Khalsa. And he literally talks about like when you get in a meeting to understand the onset things of when to stop the meeting. A lot of people don't understand. Just because I get into a meeting with you, Ravit, if I get in and I ask you, hey, Ravit, how are you going? You're like, you know what? My son just got into an accident, but let's get this done. No freaking way. Like, I'm like, no. The answer is no. It means your EQ is off, your energy is off. And we go into this robotic mode of like, oh, okay, you know, Ravit's an executive, so his emotions must be stuffed somewhere in his feet. The answer is just no. And people do this. You guys know this. You're smiling all the time, right? We go, oh, Ravit's senior, so he'll figure it out. His son's an accent. Seems like it's fine. I just go, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and let's do this another day. It's not life and death. Let you go take care of that. And I'm doing it not just for your sanity, but for the fact that my output will be affected whether or not we want to admit that. And so I think that we go into this robotic mode. So I always say people first be human, then be a freaking analyst, right? Then be a data person. So that's probably not the answer most people are expecting, but I see this happen all the time. Like think about Zoom. Someone has 4 kids in the back running around. Stop the meeting. Like, dude, I was on the Zoom.
On, Miko.
Someone, the guy got guacamole on his head, right? And he was the COO. And I was like, there's a lot happening. He's like, yeah, I need to get his medication. I said, listen, hey guys, I know it's a lot of us here. Maybe he should step away and we continue. But it's like, just be human first, man. Like, seriously. People just, you know, EQ is important. So again, not the typical answer, but I think if you do those things, Ravit, number 1, comes back to me and says, hey, I'm straight. Let me deal with you first thing in the morning. I realize I really appreciate what you did. And there's just a different level of respect.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Kate, I would like to actually pick one question here from Scott, which is kind of, you know, obviously on the same lines. Where do you find the hardest part of collaboration? Is it between peers in the same department or between different departments?
Absolutely same department for a number of reasons. 1, we assume we're thinking alike. That could not be further from the truth. A lot of times when in the department and we're thinking, oh, we all been there for 10 years. I've been there to Ravit. You've been there for 5. Kate, you've been there before me. So there's a lot of similarity. Number 2 is I feel like in the conversation, there's what I call baggage, right? So if Ravit is my boss and Kate's my report, and, you know, there's all these hierarchies that are in people's heads. And so the conversation kind of gets filtered because, you know, Ravit's my boss and I'm kind of new and I don't know if I should be saying all of this, you know what I mean? Or, you know, Kate's my colleague and she's, you know, she works next to me and we just had this discussion, but no, I might contradict her. So there's all these things that go through your head. So I personally feel like if you are speaking to people in different departments, it allows you to literally just be what you're supposed to be, which is the guide, not the hero in the conversation, and facilitate it instead of thinking about all these different things that you know, right? Just baggage. You just know stuff. You can't unknow them.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe we'll take one more from the audience, but then I also have one more. Maybe Ravit has as well. So the audience question is from Fernando. What are alternatives to dashboards? Come on, Miko, this is your time.
I know, but I'm not here to do a vendor pitch, but honestly, it's why I dropped dashboards and went to Count. We have a whiteboard with data because we are focused on not people. And we don't, by the way, if you're building dashboards, I don't mean to crucify them. Well, I do mean to crucify them. But if you're building dashboards, because ironically, you can build dashboards in Count as well. What we're recommending instead is to get down and analyze the problem together. So we're not saying the output can't be a dashboard or report. We're focused on the process to get there where it may not be a dashboard and report because you actually saw a problem before you needed this kind of set medium to fix it. So I would say, you know, dashboards are still available, reports are still available, but I'm just tired of everybody thinking that's the only way for you to visualize and express an output. It's absolutely like we are beyond that right now. 2023, LFG. Oops, sorry, Kate and Ravi.
LFG, as long as you didn't say what that stands for, we're all good here. This is a PG show.
Let's freaking go. Let's freaking go. Let's freaking go.
We could say that. So, all right. I know my last question for you, and then I'll let Ravi wrap it up. The last question is, I know you don't want this to be a vendor pitch, but I've seen it and I think it looks really cool and I want other people to see it. So where can folks go to actually see how this works? Is there a free trial or what do you have going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys want to check out what we're doing at count.co, you can just go to count.co, click on request access. To get moving faster, just put Miko LinkedIn on there or MDF. I'd say actually put MDF, Modern Data Fets, on there, and it'll get you through the queue a lot faster. So our queue has a little bit of a delay because we have good income in. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and check it out, and once you get in there, you could actually play with all the templates and see what's happening and just bring in a colleague or friend and just start tackling data problems. Like that's where we want to get people to. We just want to get them back to solving problems together instead of just resorting to these non-dynamic and static mediums. It's a good question. Thank you, Kate.
Love it. Of course. Ravi, I'll give you the honor of the last question of the whole show. Go for it.
Yeah. So my question is, how does Count fit into the broader modern data stack? Would love to learn more about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'm not the techie, of course, but our entire tool is bred off the modern data stack to the point where we don't even connect traditional databases, right? So we literally connect off of Snowflake, all the modern data stacks that, you know, we connect to Azure, Synapse, and a few others, which you could see on the site. But what we are looking at when it comes to the analytics workflow, right? Where we sit is what we call the last mile of analytics. So if you are familiar with analytics workflow, we feel that in the very last mile, where it comes down to humans needing to interact to make decisions, that is where Count shines, okay? So this is after you've put the data in one place, after you've put rules around the data, you know, all these other steps, this very last mile is where Count really helps companies to really shine when it comes to their data. And so not everybody is there as yet, but there are a lot of people who are there that don't even recognize that they're there and they're stuck and they're wondering why is it not working. That is where our platform comes in to help you as a team.
I love it.
Great question. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, Miko, thank you so much for being our big finale. I love it. I always bring the energy. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time here today. You do still have questions coming in on the chat if you want to hop over to LinkedIn, Miko. That would be great.